and get your hair cut way up high. Get yourself a lawyer, son. You're gonna need a real good one.
And he's back with you to give real good legal advice. David Whiting, well-known Melbourne solicitor, dispensing free legal assistance for you this morning. 1300 222 774. Guess what? I've got some free lines. Line 2 is not flashing. Line 3 is not flashing. Line 1, already got someone there. Well, that's good. So, which means if you've been sitting there wondering whether you'll get through to David, you will if you call right now. 1300 222 774. David Whiting, hello.
Hello, Virginia. How was your break?
My break was terrific. I thought, it's how silly to have a 2-week break in total and absolute lockdown, but it turns out it's actually a lovely thing to do. You do a lot of Lego, you read a few books, you watch some trash TV, and you do a lot of walking.
And we do a lot of jigsaws.
Oh, I love a jigsaw.
It sits on the dining room table and gets visited during the course of the day.
Exactly. Now, that's how I used to always mark my summer holidays. But then when the little one came along and pieces would go missing, I decided I can't return to the jigsaw until I've got a responsible older child. And I do now, so you've reminded me. So I'll get my summer jigsaw. What picture do you have going at the moment, David?
There's a company that makes reverse jigsaws. Oh. So they show you a picture of people, all cartoon-type characters, who are looking at something else, and the jigsaw that you make is the jigsaw of what they're looking at.
Oh, my God.
So I have seen jigsaws that have rotated images on both sides, so that's hard. And I've seen black jigsaws where everything's black, so it's just a matching. So they're the ones that we're doing at the moment, and we're finding that they take about a week to complete, 1,000 pieces.
I think it'd take me a year to complete that. Let's get to some legal advice. 1300 222 774. Any homework?
We did. We had Caroline from Bayside with a really interesting question. Caroline has a tree on her property, which over time is expected to cause difficulties with the property next door, and the problem is that it's a protected tree under the planning scheme or under the local law, and she's not allowed by law pull it down. So the question arises as to what's her responsibility. And the answer is that after a week's fairly intensive research, I don't have an answer for Caroline. I can tell you that in 2019, the Law Reform Commission of Victoria gave a 300-page report to the state government with a series of recommendations about how neighbourhood trees might be dealt with. But, as you'll appreciate, the government's had other priorities since then. So the issue is, my proposition at the moment is that if I am prohibited by law from pulling the tree down, then I have no liability to you as the neighbour. There then becomes an interesting question as to whether the council has some liability. And I think that depends on whether it's a street tree or not a street tree.
Right.
So the answer would be I don't have a clear answer. I do think that you would have an obligation, at least a moral obligation, to apply to council for a permit to deal with the tree, but I don't think you need to do anything more.
Okay, there you go. I hope you're listening this morning. Caroline from Bayside. Sue in Cheltenham, you get to kick off legal talk this week. Good morning. What's going on?
Oh, hi. I'm a bit nervous, sorry.
That's all right.
My kids bought a place earlier in the year. It's a group of 4. They're sort of townhouse sort of units, and they have a common roof. And a month after the purchase, in a sort of joint conversation with 2 of the other owners, who are interstate and are the committee, apparently, we were told that there were roof problems. This was verbally. We were told it would cost $10,000. My kids are devastated. They're mortgaged up to the hill, etc., etc. So anyway, we were looking into it, and it seems it's $16,000, and there was no. It's just this quote or report that they commissioned, which they didn't want to give us. And anyway, we looked in the AGM last year, and there was maintenance, repairs, nil. And then we looked in the owner's corp certificate, It says any, problems, none at this time to our knowledge. And we just wondered what we could do. We then asked last week from the body corporate if we could have any correspondence relating to the roof, and they inquired from the two other owners, the committee members, who had said no. So we haven't got any correspondence.
It's one of the practical problems you have with a small owners corporation that doesn't have a professional manager. Try it from a different perspective. If you have copies of the quotes, why don't you go back to the people who provided the quotes and find out when they received a request for a quote and if they've had any earlier discussions in relation to it. I would be interested to see whether the owners corporation has an insurance policy, because there might be some liability on the owners corporation and its directors and officers.
Is there some liability on the seller here, David, to have disclosed this before sale?
Yes, but we've talked a little bit about Section 12 in the Sale of Land Act that imposes this obligation to disclose. The difficulty is that it creates a criminal offence but doesn't create a right of compensation in a purchaser. So your problem, Sue, is that I think it will be an owners corporation problem. The way you've described it, my expectation would be that the roof was common property, even though it's on the top of the unit that your children have purchased. And it's really a matter that you would take up.
It's not on the top of ours, it's on the top of the other two. And I've got the quote, but as I say, and I've spoken to the insurance company and they said that there's no sort of liability, they wouldn't pay for anything. But this all happened, so the Owners Corp are actually a big company in the centre of Melbourne, and they won't...
So there is a manager for the Owners Corporation?
Yeah, it's massive.
Okay, then I would be talking to them about or are they saying they don't know anything? Because you are entitled to search the records at an Owners Corporation if you're a member of the Owners Corp.
Okay, well, we might leave it with the Owners Corp.
So I'd push that a bit harder.
Okay.
Yep.
So good luck with that. Hope it goes well. Peter in Thomastown, good morning.
Good morning. Look, my question is, we bought a block of land about 4 years ago. There were 3 blocks in the subdivision which were opposite an accommodation sort of place up in the country where we hope to retire soon. Now, part of that, there's a laneway that runs through the centre of that, so between sort of us and the other lot, I guess you'd call it. Now, part of that laneway is common property, which belongs to the Owners Corporation, which is lots 1 and 2, which is myself and some other owners.
Yeah.
Now, the other part is path, it's just the laneway. Now, we're trying to ascertain what the rights or what obligations, the council is saying it's private, so they don't have anything to do with it. Someone who we've spoken to at Vic Road seemed to think that the council do. The only reason we need to sort this out is because at times when they can have guests and stuff, there are buses that come up the laneway. Now, once upon a time, there were no houses opposite, so that was fine, I guess. But our driveway abuts onto that laneway.
Okay, so what's your question?
Peter?
Well, there is no sort of traffic control in the laneway whatsoever. So who actually... Yeah.
Okay. So Peter, your starting point is to find out who owns it, because it will have an owner. I would be looking at the council has a register of properties. Mm-hmm. And my starting point would be to see whether the council assumes ownership of it.
Well, I've asked the council and they said it's a private laneway, and they said they don't like to get involved in private laneways.
Right, so your next point is to see who owns it. So you can do a title search to find out who owns that particular parcel of land. So if you look at the Victorian Government website, the Victorian Government has a website called LASSI, LASSI. It's a survey, contains lots of survey plans, land and survey spatial information. Mm-hmm. So if you Google LASSI, LASSI, and you put in the address of your property, it will have lot and plan numbers for your property and for adjoining properties, and that would be the start in doing a title search. And when you know who owns it and when you know what rights affect it, you're in a position where you can get some advice as to what your rights are in relation to it.
All right. Well, we might leave you to try and find that out. Thanks so much for calling in, Peter. Kevin's in Baldwin. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. I have a situation. The house where I live, I have a very high brick fence. The footpath is directly outside, and young children ride up and down on bicycles at quite considerable pace at times.
Mm-hmm.
I was pulling out of my driveway the other day, and I did toot the horn very briefly, and a young boy on a bicycle slammed into the side of my car.
Oh, was the boy okay?
I think they took him up to hospital and said he was okay.
Oh, my goodness.
Made a mess of his bicycle.
Sorry, just before you move on, is he okay now? How is the child?
Yeah, he's fine, yeah.
Okay, go on.
He only had a few scratches.
Yep.
But he landed on the lawn, so that was fine. Well,
I don't know about fine, but he landed on the lawn. Go on.
But there was considerable damage to my car, and obviously his bicycle was rather heavily damaged. I took him to his house, and then I went back to see his parents to inquire about how they would, what they do about the damage to my car. And in fact, I was confronted with the fact that, no, what are you going to do about the repairs to his the payment for his repairs to his bike?
I can understand why they might have said that. David?
Kevin, I understand the situation that you're in. You've got a high brick wall that runs right to the edge of your driveway.
Yep.
And how old was the child, by the way?
I think around 9 or 10.
Okay.
And he had, can I say...
Children 12 and under.
Yep.
You first, Kevin.
He had earbuds in, so he didn't hear me toot.
The answer would be you're going to be the net loser, Kevin.
Right.
He's entitled to ride a push bike on the footpath if he's 12 or under.
Okay.
You, on the other hand, and so he has an obligation to look out. You too have an obligation to look out. Isn't currently a law that says you can't ride earbuds on a bike, but I'm hopeful they'll bring one in one day. So where you get to is that, from a civil perspective, there would be an apportionment of your liability and his liability.
Yep.
And let's say it's 50-50. He ends up being liable to pay 50% of the cost of repairs to your vehicle, and you end up being liable to pay 50% of the cost of the repairs to his bicycle.
Okay.
It doesn't help you, does it?
Well, helps a little bit. I mean,
no, because you'll end up being out of pocket, because the cost of repairs to your car will be significantly greater, and he'll have, at the age of 9, will have no assets that can be taken in satisfaction of your claim.
Okay.
Kevin, have you considered that maybe your brick fence is a bit too high and is causing potential problems every time you back out?
I got no problem. I'm in a rented house. I mean, I have got a problem. I'm in a rented house.
Yes.
Yeah.
Might be a conversation.
There's no easy answer, Kevin.
No.
Perhaps some mirrors might help. Some of those curved mirrors you sometimes see.
Oh yes, yeah. Attached to the side.
I mean, look,
corner.
Seriously, this is only a product of the sort of the COVID times and kids out on the streets riding bikes around.
Well,
all the
no,
time.
it's a constant problem because kids are always out on bikes on the streets, and when we're reversing out of our driveways, David, the onus is completely on us, isn't it? When we reverse out. We've got to be the ones taking care.
Oh, yeah. Are we taking the road rules as you enter the roadway will require you to keep a proper lookout?
Yeah, that's right.
And the difficulty, of course, is that you've extended 2/3 of your vehicle's length into the roadway before you can see anything.
Exactly right. And I think your suggestion of a mirror, that curved mirror perhaps attached to the side of the wall, might be a useful one. Well, good luck, and I hope the child is okay and also the relationship with the neighbours is okay. Let's stay with bicycles. Sarah in Camberwell, what's going on? Good morning.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. Yes, still on the themes of bicycles.
That's okay, go ahead.
I was on a bike ride with my partner on the weekend, and it was on a allocated bike path, and my poor partner came off his bike, didn't hit anything. He just kind of skidded out and landed on his face. He's damaged a couple of teeth. He had a significant head injury. He's okay now. He's at home recovering. I guess we're just wondering whether there's any follow-up we can do with the council. So I went back to where it happened, and there was a piece of concrete that was kind of, it has an X on it, so it looks like they were going to remove it, I guess is what that means. So I'm not sure whether that's what he hit, and I just don't know whether it's worth following up because teeth are really expensive.
Well, they are, aren't they? Particularly ones you weren't born with, yeah. Sarah, can I give you an answer next week? My view is that the council has a responsibility, given that they had commenced the process for doing work and not taken it on. If there was no marking on the concrete, my view would be that your claim against the council would be lost because the Road Management Act excludes them from lots of liabilities. But I don't think you have a claim under the Accident Compensation Act with the TAC, but I'll follow up both of those for next week.
Okay, so tune in next week, Sarah. We should have an answer for you then. Vic in Maribyrnong, what's your question? Good morning.
Oh, hi. Listen, problem dealing with buying over the internet. I bought a $160 book via Amazon, and they did not package the thing in a waterproof covering. It was delivered, I was told it would be delivered on October sometime. It was delivered on the 15th of September. It sat there until the 24th out in the weather in non-waterproof packaging. Want to contact Amazon, want to contact the deliverer. There are no means by which to contact
true. You can't
them.
contact Amazon.
Now, listen, then I went to Consumer Affairs. They got no way of dealing with this. I'm going to write to the Minister of Consumer Affairs to deal with it. But I'm wondering what you've had in the way of problems like this confronting you, David. I'm sure that I'm not the only one. They could have took it to the post office. They could have put it in my letterbox, but they left it dancing out in the weather.
All right. Well, let's see. David thinks you got any recourse. David?
Oh, your recourse is against Amazon, depending upon the terms of their rules. One of the fascinating things about, say, Australia Post, for example, is that while you have when you send a registered parcel expecting that it will be dealt with in a particular way, their terms of service don't require them to deal with it that way. But your claim is against Amazon, because whoever was to deliver the mail or to deliver the parcel to you is their agent, not yours. So you don't have a separate claim against the delivery company. Your claim is against Amazon, and you can, if you wish, take Amazon to VCAT.
I want to do that.
Oh, I don't know if I'd advise taking Amazon to VCAT, David. Really?
Listen,
I'd have no hesitation. My difficulty will be it's probably going to take you nigh on 12 months to get a resolution at VCAT because of their pressure.
If that's the scare that they want to put on people so that they don't do some kind of action, it's no wonder these companies get away with this rubbish.
Sure.
Well, I don't think that someone at Amazon got up one morning and thought, how can we screw Vic from Maribyrnong, right?
No, they got up one morning to say how we can screw everybody, and that's it.
No.
It's a lack of duty of care.
Well,
Yes.
listen, David, I mean, he's entitled to make that point because clearly it was a lack of duty of care when it came to the deliverer.
Yes.
Leaving something out in the weather is not advisable, is it? So is there any action he can take against the deliverer?
No. The deliverer is not his agent. Look, the answer is he does have a separate action against the deliverer, but it's in a sense I'd rather have a go at the person who contracted to deliver it rather than the deliverer.
You really would? Okay. Well,
how to contact them? They give no contact.
I know, Vic. I can't help you there. I'm so sorry. It's almost deliberate, isn't it?
It is deliberate, not just suppose. It's definitely deliberate.
Vic, I'm sorry to hear
people
it.
have to take steps to do something about this type of rubbish.
Well, Vic, if you take it on, let me know, okay?
I'm definitely taking it on.
Well, you keep us informed.
How we're told to do everything over online,
yep.
And yet nothing is done to control this. It's deregulated, and it's deregulated for a reason.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point, and I totally understand and share your frustration. I reckon a lot of people listening this morning would as well. Let's see if we can very, very quickly just get to Patricia in Toorak. If we can just slot this in. Hi, Patricia.
Hello. Oh, good morning. Good morning, everyone. My query relates to a sewerage easement of 50 square metres, which is currently part of the backyard of the property immediately over the fence of this owners' corporation. And there's been negotiations about selling this land to him, and we've had a failed ballot, etc. And I'm wondering, the lease has 20 years to run, and there is a line of garages across the back of the property which are licensed to owners till the end of the century. And I'm wondering whether trying to sell this is realistic.
You can sell it, but you would sell it subject to the leases. So is it possible for you to sell land that's subject to a lease? Yes, it happens all the time, but it doesn't upset the lease. The occupancy rights remain in place. What you're really doing is selling the land subject to the lease.
So, but if nothing happens, we have had negotiations, both sides have spent money, and we've had a failed ballot, and it's taken a lot of people's time. If nothing happens and in 20 years' time the lease expires and the garages are still there, can't the owner just say, well, bye-bye?
Yep, absolutely. I want vacant. You need to look at the terms of the lease, Patricia, to find out what the tenant's obligations are at the end of the lease. So what we're talking about is an area of land that you presumably own that backs onto a block of units on which someone has constructed garages.
Yes.
Right, so someone's constructed garages, there's a lease in place. Yep. There's a lease in place. Then at the end of 20 years, the answer would be the owner of the land is entitled to the land back, and probably, though it depends on the terms of the lease, without the garages on them.
We'll have to leave it there, Patricia. I'm sorry we can't help you any further. Many people still waiting. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of you. We tried to rush through those as quickly as possible. But David, always great to have you on board. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
David Whiting, a well-known Melbourne solicitor. Call in again next week, and we've got a bit of homework we can share with you when David returns next week as well.